The movie opens in Iraq, where U.S. planes are bombing an area. Miles and his squad, American soldiers, take cover in a crumbling building while exchanging fire with the enemy. Unfortunately, their captain is shot in the neck and dies in Miles's arms. An explosion shakes the building, and a bright light appears. Miles rushes out to rejoin the fight but is hit in the stomach and collapses. Before losing consciousness, he sees two missile-like objects fly past, followed by a strange aircraft that shines a light on him, causing him to scream before blacking out. Later, Miles awakens in pain in a windowless, doorless room with gray panels. He tries to stand and listens through the walls, but his wound bleeds, and he falls again. Calling for help, he wonders if he's in a hospital, but no one responds. Using his emergency supplies, he cleans and bandages his wound. Miles attempts to use his radio, but it doesn't work. He then notices the word abandon written upside down on the wall, which wasn't there before. Desperately, he calls for help again, this time in Arabic. Checking the wall again, it now reads abandon all hope, while the floor reads, save thy sinner's soul. Feeling lightheaded, Miles removes his backpack and jacket as the room heats up. He begins to panic, sweating profusely and frantically hitting the walls, begging to be released. His sweat boils on the ground, and he starts questioning whether he is dead, slowly unraveling. In a desperate, animalistic fury, he grabs his gun and shoots at the walls. The heat becomes unbearable, and Miles passes out, screaming in agony. When he regains consciousness, the room's temperature has returned to normal. As he tries to drink from his flask, the room starts spinning, throwing him and his belongings around. After a few minutes, the spinning stops, and Miles notices that some items are now stuck to the ceiling. He tries his radio again and hears a woman's voice, but the call abruptly ends. Remembering his cell phone, which is stuck on the ceiling, he uses binoculars to carve the number into the floor with his knife. The phone rings, and Miles attempts to reach it, worsening his wound in the process. He throws a shoe at it, but it also sticks to the ceiling. Frost suddenly appears on the walls, so he puts on extra clothes and curls up in a fetal position. Moments later, the frost vanishes, leaving him with frostbite on his fingers. The phone rings again, and then an alarm blares as the room moves, causing the phone to fall. Despite the chaos, Miles manages to grab it just before the spinning stops. Regaining access to his helmet, he takes out a picture of his wife and daughter. Checking the phone, he calls the number, and a woman answers, explaining that she has been kidnapped and is trapped in a spinning room. Miles confirms that she is in a room like his. Noticing a faint glow on his arm, he theorizes they might be the light sources. He questions the woman, but she becomes scared, thinking he's part of a scam. He insists he's trapped and bleeding too, and she apologizes. They agree to help each other, and she introduces herself as Damsey. Damsey explains that she was on the highway before being abducted. Miles recalls that his team was near a highway before the attack. Damsey then asks if he was stationed there, making Miles uneasy because he never mentioned being a soldier. She reassures him, saying she guessed based on his demeanor and questions. Suddenly, Damsey stops speaking and grunts in pain. Miles's dog tags are yanked back, choking him, while an invisible force pulls his arms apart, causing him to drop the phone. His body begins to levitate, his limbs stretched painfully by a bright light before he is dropped back to the ground. Through the phone, Miles hears Damsey being dropped as well, followed by a strange noise. He warns her that the room is about to move again. This time, the walls move inward, causing Miles to panic. He tries to push against the wall but collapses and passes out. When he wakes, he discovers that the room has shrunk. In a panic, he calls Damsey, who confirms her room has also shrunk. She uses calming words to help him, but then curses as she sets her dislocated shoulder back in place. Miles notices that there are words on the wall in different languages, which Damsey confirms are also in her room. She explains that she wasn't physically abducted and mentions a location in Massachusetts, which makes Miles realize something is wrong. He believes they are still in Iraq, but Damsey says it doesn't make sense given the setup. She claims she's only been there for an hour, but it would take days to build such a facility. Damsey also saw the strange objects in the sky before she was taken. Miles yells through the walls to see if Damsey is nearby, but she can't hear him. He wonders how she got his number, and Damsey says it appeared on her ceiling. Suddenly, the phone announces another call. Miles tells Damsey to call back later and answers the new call. A man with broken English says they can't win because they can't solve the equation and that they must die. Before Miles can respond, the call ends, and the phone switches back to Damsey. Disturbed, Miles numbly starts talking to her again. She asks where he thinks the signals are coming from, and Miles asks if she knows anything about the equation on the wall. Damsey, however, sees no such equation. Growing suspicious, Damsey seeks reassurance that they are in this together. She wants to find a pattern to understand why they were chosen, as she refuses to believe it was random. Miles, changing his bandages, insists there is no pattern. Damsey shares that she is an algebra teacher and is engaged to a former soldier. However, Miles notices that she doesn't sound happy when talking about her fiancé, implying he changed after returning from war. Miles then admits that he and his wife are also not on good terms. As he eats his last rations, he notices that some of the words on the walls are associated with years ranging from 1951 to 2007. Confused, Miles points out that 2007 is in the future. Damsey asks what year it is, and Miles responds that it's 1991. Laughing sarcastically, Damsey asks if he's using a walkie-talkie, and he replies that it's a satellite phone. Damsey mentions social media and selfies, but Miles doesn't understand. Suddenly, the room glows, emitting a noise so intense that Miles's ears begin to bleed. He writes the time on his arm before grabbing his head in agony and passing out. Moments later, he wakes up, trembling and struggling to breathe. The word answer appears on the wall as the phone rings. Miles forces himself to answer it, telling Damsey there's not enough air and realizing the room has shrunk even further. Damsey is experiencing the same thing. Damsey asks Miles to draw something on the wall, and he sketches an axe. In her time, which is 2020, Damsey surrounds the axe with a handprint, theorizing that she, Miles, and others are in the same room but at different points in time. Miles starts feeling dizzy, rambling incoherently, and then collapses. He asks Damsey about the future and is disheartened to learn that the war is still ongoing. He talks about his father, revealing that his dad fought in Vietnam, before losing consciousness again. Damsey calls out his name, and he wakes up, saying she needs him. He notices his Arabic dictionary has fallen, and some of the symbols match those on the wall. He translates the message and writes it on the floor for Damsey to see. The result is an equation, and they realize a mathematician among the kidnapped must have left it as a clue. All the victims seem to be connected to math. Suddenly, someone scribbles over the equation, so Miles quickly writes it on his arm. Damsey confesses she has an advanced degree in math but works as a teacher because her fiancé dislikes it when she talks smart. She asks if the war changed Miles and made him hurt someone he loves. Defensively, Miles says she wouldn't understand how war transforms people, revealing that his dad used to beat his mom. Damsey remembers the equation, and Miles urges her to write it on the wall before anything changes again. Struggling, she uses her keys to scratch the wall. Suddenly, the room begins to shake, and Miles is forced to the ground by increased gravity. His wounds reopen, causing him to bleed more as his face hits the floor. He screams in pain, but after a few minutes, the pressure subsides. When the ordeal is over, Miles reaches for the phone, only to find its screen cracked. The alarm blares, and the room spins again. Since it's now smaller, Miles can jump from wall to wall instead of being thrown around. The spinning ends quickly this time, but the room has shrunk even more. Miles tries the phone again. At first, there's no response, and he feels ready to give up. But someone eventually answers. The person on the other end repeats cryptic phrases like, "They can't see. They don't know, and they will fail and sacrifice." Miles doesn't understand, so he hangs up. He reconnects with Damsey, who says she broke her arm and is running out of battery. She believes death might be their only escape. Miles becomes suspicious, realizing she may have been working with the foreign man all along and angrily confronts her for the betrayal. Finally, Damsey confesses what she knows. They were captured by a superior species testing human intelligence to determine whether humanity is a threat. She believes humans aren't smart enough to challenge these aliens. They then discuss how they might use the equation to control the room. Damsey theorizes that the solution could hold the key to their escape. Miles wonders aloud if only one person might be able to escape, specifically the one who solves the equation first. Suddenly, the light goes out. In the darkness, Miles is heard screaming and cursing at the aliens, ignoring Damsey's attempts to calm him down. He starts having flashbacks from the war and memories of his father beating his mother, which cause him to yell in torment. Eventually, the flashbacks stop, and Miles tells the aliens they've won, asking them to end things. Crying, he prepares to shoot himself, believing he can no longer deal with his trauma. He questions his father's actions and admits he fears becoming like him but doesn't want to. After reminding himself that he is not his father, Miles lowers the gun and calls Damsey, who is also crying. She reveals that her fiancé used to beat her, and one day, after running away, she crashed her car on the highway. That's when the aliens took her. Damsey asks if Miles has ever hit anyone, and he answers that he hasn't but has thought about it. Disgusted, Damsey insults him and hangs up. Miles then receives a call from the foreign man, who scolds him for trying to solve the equation. The man insists that humans must not win, as they would become a threat to the aliens. He warns that if the aliens see Earth as a danger, the consequences could be catastrophic. The alarm sounds again, and the room starts shrinking. Miles tries to stop it, but soon his body is contorted painfully as the space tightens around him. At that moment, Damsey calls again and asks the same question. Miles swears he never harmed his family, admitting he had urges but fought them to avoid becoming like his father. He believes Damsey should solve the equation, apologizing for who he is and for what she has been through. She forgives him. Miles asks her to find his family and tell them he loves them and that they deserve better. Now motivated, Damsey uses the time between the room's movements to finish the equation. The answer is 1. She tries concentrating on spinning the room once, but nothing happens. Reflecting on the equation, Damsey realizes that 1 signifies mankind as a whole, one entity. The aliens want to see if humans can stop fighting and work together. Miles focuses his energy and pushes the room, helping Damsey. They scream together until the room suddenly explodes into a bright light. To their shock, Damsey and Miles see each other for the first time, touching hands as they float in the light. The wall panels float around them, showing all the other kidnapped people. This means they've solved the equation and freed everyone. Damsey and Miles say hello and share a smile before disappearing into the light. Miles reappears in Iraq. He gets up and tries to contact his team, but there's no response. As he makes his way back, he hears sirens wailing and sees planes flying overhead. When he finds the American troops, they are looking at something ominous in the sky. The movie ends with Miles staring upward, leaving the nature of what he sees a mystery to the audience. Thanks for watching. Until next time, have a nice day.